Hi, everybody, and welcome to Truth to Power for You. I'm your host, Brian Kasher. Truth to Power for You is a mini-series produced for people who not only want change, but are willing to do what it takes to make change. And that means, legislative assistants, that means mom and pop sitting on the couch, that means college students, that means doctors, that means the homeless, all of us, everyone who wants to work for change, okay? Our goal at Truth to Power for You is to help you foster change by featuring interviews with successful organizers, people who have successfully organized change in their communities, or at the state level or nationally or internationally. And they share their tactics and strategies for change. And then we also feature music and arts for change as well. And today's special guest is Joel Segal. Joel has been organizing and been active in the change process for quite some time. Joel was the former senior legislative assistant and speechwriter for Representative John Conyers, who was the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. He was known as the Dean of the U.S. Congress and, of course, the Dean of the Congressional Black Caucus. Joel was founder of the year 2000 Universal Healthcare Movement and co-authored House Resolution 676, which is now heralded as Representative Conyers' expanded and improved Medicare for All bill. Joel was one of the leading architects for passage of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Joel was a senior technical consultant for Michael Moore's healthcare documentary Sicko, and he co-founded the Global AIDS HIV Alliance, and not to mention he was one of the senior Hill staffers who worked on federal legislation involving things like AIDS, voter suppression, ending homelessness, Hurricane Katrina, jobs for all, ending poverty, and more. Well, to put it in a sentence, Joel has organized successfully at the local, statewide, national, and even international levels. Hey, there he is. How you doing, Joel?
Beautiful, Brian. Good to see you.
So how's it going? How's mom? How's your brother and sister? Everything going good?
Family is going great, and how is yours?
Very good. We're doing as good as we can under the circumstances, but all love to you and yours.
Likewise, you're looking very sharp, by the way. Looking great.
Hey, we'll help you. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Joel, I wanted to start this talk session about your work with the Justice Mobilization Network. You have been at the core of founding climate change movement, voter suppression actions, the global AIDS movement, and more. And even now with COVID-19. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the Justice Mobilization Network.
Well, certainly. Justice Action Mobilization Network was founded about 7 years ago in Washington, D.C. And it was literally an amalgam of, I think, the best, most talented, committed people in America and even around the globe who believed that climate change is so serious that we needed a rainbow united front to get to 100% clean renewable energy, which would mean we would have to take on the fossil fuel industrial complex, oil, gas, coal, the Republican Party industrial complex, and the Chamber of Commerce industrial complex, and the banking industrial complex, which has a lot of investments in coal and oil. And so we wanted more communities of color involved, but we wanted not only to crush climate change, but we wanted to end poverty. So by combating climate change, you could create 7 million clean energy jobs, for example. And we work with several scientists like Dr. Michael Mann and Mark Jacobson, who are, I think, two of the best scientists out there in terms of climate change. And we really want to see the Congress and the world rapidly go to 100% clean renewable energy, most of it in the next 10 years. That's all we have left to save civilization, according to thousands of scientists.
So in terms of who's involved with JAMN, what kind of people getting involved? Is it scientists and doctors, or who's really involved? Who are you looking to be involved with JAMN?
I would say we're a bottom-up grassroots movement, and anybody from members of Congress to Hill staffers to mayors, governors, people who just go to work every day and punch in the clock, environmentalists, public health specialists, physicians, nurses, people like you, Brian, who have a family and a beautiful wife and kids, and because in order to make change, you have to bring in literally everybody. As Mr. Conyers taught me, in order to have a critical mass, you got to bring in all kinds of people. But we have focused a lot too on farmers from the Hispanic community, interfaith leaders like Reverend Ronnie Sadler, mayors like Mayor Jennifer Roberts, Mustafa Ali, who used to work as a senior official for the Environmental Protection Agency, former senior advisor to President Obama on environmental justice, and the Princess of Africa, Princess Okanse. And the list just goes on and on and on. James Fukuda, who develops affordable housing out of New York City. So Reverend Leo Woodbury, who's one of the most prominent environmentalist, climate change, environmental justice, social leaders in the country. So it's been a great experience. We've had 2 national conferences, one in DC, one in New York. And what we did was, I felt like, the climate movement were not quite straight. They weren't friends. And in order to build a movement, you have to be friends first. And we had conferences, so we became friends and we got to know each other and bonded. And I think this is the group that's going to literally save our planet. And I'm really proud of each and every one of our members. And we're a network. So there's just so many talented people who are in the Justice Action Movement network. I love my work. I love it.
Okay. So why don't you share a little bit about some of the issues? What are some of the big issues out there going on right now?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest ones is COVID-19. Trump administration has been completely incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. And as the result, I think thousands of people have died needlessly. So I have formed a COVID-19 emergency response group with same kind of people I talked to you about before, and we're trying to introduce legislation in Congress or support legislation that'll protect people from being evicted or getting their utilities turned off, make sure that our hospitals are completely equipped with respirators and equipment they don't even have now, make sure that the undocumented become legal residents, if not citizens, so they can get the stimulus checks. They're the ones who do most of the work in this country, whether it's farming, manufacturing, working, in the food industry. So it's really going really, really well. There are members of Congress who are seriously looking at our legislation, and we're going to do a press conference, I think, next week. And this is an unprecedented coalition that we had to form in order to meet the COVID-19 emergency. I'm also involved in voter suppression, crushing voter suppression, voter purging. 17 million people purged. That's the Republican Party is stealing our elections. That is I try not to be partisan, but I can't do that because that's what they're doing. They want to win their elections by stealing them. So there's going to be a conference in Charlotte, North Carolina in early August, sponsored by Transformative Justice Coalition, the Rainbow Coalition. Now, this is nonpartisan, by the way. I'm speaking to you tonight as a citizen activist, but it's an attempt to form the broadest coalition that we've ever had to crush voter suppression, voter purging, voting machines that don't work. We're going to have to look at paper ballots. And so it's been very, very, very busy, few months. That's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, Joel, I mean, the issues that you're talking about here are fundamental to, in terms of COVID-19 life, right? Life as we know it, I think, has changed. But then in terms of the life of our democracy, right, the protection of the integrity of our election system is central to that. Without that, the whole idea of America is gone. It's just gone, right? I mean, we can call it whatever we want to call it. So other than the conference that's coming up, what other kind of activities are going on? What do you got going on out there, Joel?
Well, in Charlotte, we recently passed probably one of the most progressive 100% clean renewable energy plans in the country. That took about a year of work that was done by the Charlotte climate leaders. So by, let's say, 2030, our transportation and our buildings have to be 100% clean renewable energy. Now, it was unanimously voted on by the city council. So we're working to make sure that it's actually implemented. I'm involved in negotiations with Duke Energy Renewables, with different business leaders and faith leaders. I'm also still very much involved in single payer and Medicare for all. In fact, I was on the phone today with Dr. El Sayed, who's one of the new leaders of the single payer movement, and he ran for governor on Medicare for all, and he's a phenomenal man. So I'm still involved in Medicare for all. I'm drafting legislation with several homeless advocates to end homelessness, and then drafting a lot of legislation around COVID-19 and organizing the grassroots and the grass tops to support existing legislation introduced by people like Representative Jayapal and Bernie Sanders for like a temporary universal health care program. And I'm playing my bass guitar as much as I can so I can play the funk.
I was hoping.
I got to play music, or I got to play.
I was hoping you'd get to that. We've got one of your songs queued up at the end of the show, and I think people will get a real kick out of it. But, you mentioned music, and at Truth to Power for You, we value music and the arts very much. Can you just talk a little bit about how music touches people and how you've integrated that into what you do?
Well, it's the universal language of love, and I started playing the bass guitar when I was 16. I studied classical, I studied jazz. I wanted to be the greatest bass player, which did not happen, but I ended up playing in college, different bands, and then I went on the road for 4 years, and I had a great time playing professionally. And then you produced my last CD, thank you, and shameless plug for Funkology 101, the Joel Segal sessions, produced by Brian Casher. And what I learned as a musician was how to listen to people. So when you're in a studio or you're playing in a band, you got to learn to listen to the other musicians. So I really learned to listen. And and when you're a bass player, you're in the background playing the groove. And I kind of like being in the background and keeping the band together. But also you learn how to work as a team, and you're trying to find the groove of the song. I brought that into organizing, finding the groove, don't have an ego, play the bass, keep the band together. And plus I had so much fun as a musician. Playing music is fun. Musicians are very funny. So I try to bring that to organizing as well, being a team, finding the groove, having fun, even though, there are horrible things that happen to people in this world, but at the same time, we don't have that much time on the earth. And most people don't want to be around people who are overly serious or arrogant or abrasive. And I try to bring the joy of music, the joy of funk, the joy of life to everything that I do.
I love how you put that. In the progressive movement, in any movement, holding people together seems to be one of the biggest problems, whether it's the silos that we end up in or isolation, used a little differently than we are today. But I love the analogy you made to the musicians jamming, right? Everybody gets in the groove, and 4 people playing in a band know where each other is going. And in our organizing strategies, it's a different vibe. I mean, when you're really jamming and it's happening, you feel it. But a lot of times that vibe just isn't there. And I really love how you show and share with people how music, right, the vibe, right, can be part of the movement as well. It's really almost.
Well, I have 2 bass guitars. I have 2 tattoos, Brian. I have a Music Man bass that says funk, and I have a jazz bass that says jazz funk. That's how my mother, when she saw it, she was like, "You're Jewish. You're not supposed to have tattoos." And I'm like, "This Jewish guy does have tattoos because I'm a bass player. There's nothing in the Torah that says thou shalt not wear bass guitar tattoos." And but yeah, I mean, you know, when you're organizing, you just cannot have an ego. You're fighting for the people who are invisible, the homeless, the people who are getting their butt kicked, people who can't find a job, people who don't have health care, people in Africa who were dying of HIV/AIDS, people who don't have housing. And I think what music did is it taught me that in order to find that groove, so that you're playing live or you're in the studio and you're making people feel something. Similarly, you got to make people feel something when you're doing politics. Just like when I'm playing music, I had the great fortune to work with Michael Moore. I never thought I would ever work with Michael Moore. And we did the movie Sicko together. And, when we worked on it, he was an awesome man to work with. He's a genius, I think. But I wanted people to feel what it was like being uninsured, because I grew up uninsured. My father died when I was 14. I had pre-existing conditions, sleep apnea, almost died from it. And so when we were working on universal health care in Congress, we weren't moving it that quickly. And I felt very alone. In fact, I was one of the few staffers that worked on universal health care up until about 2009 when Obama got elected. And I just felt like we needed a movie that would show the pain of the uninsured so people would feel it. So everything I do is about getting people to feel the suffering of others, because if you don't feel it and there's no empathy, there's no compassion, you're not going to find a solution to something where you don't feel there's a problem. So in my work, I always try to bring in the real voices of people who are being hurt. Today on our COVID-19 call, I brought, I'm going to call musicians and actors and actresses who are very afraid that they're not going to be able to pay for their rent next month, or how they're going to get food. I brought in a nurse from Colombia who said that they don't even have not just respirators, they just don't have basic equipment for surgery. And
it's a travesty.
All that's based on being a musician.
It's awful. Good. All right. Oh, anyway, didn't mean to cut you off there, Joel. Hey, I wanted to ask. I met somebody, I haven't met him in person yet, but I met somebody named Abe Gurko through you. And Abe has produced a PSA, and I'd like to show it at this point. It's very, do you know about this PSA? Have you seen it?
Yeah. Abe Gurko is this unbelievably talented music producer, I guess writer. I mean, he's a genius, and yeah, he's doing the PSAs for the August Protecting America's Vote Summit that we're having here in Charlotte, to form the broadest coalition ever to fight voter suppression and protecting our vote, getting people registered, et cetera, getting people to poll. So yeah, I've seen it. It's amazing. Absolutely.
That's
amazing.
Awesome. That's awesome. So this PSA, this song was written by Abe's uncle when he was in a concentration camp before his execution by the Nazis. The Smithsonian recently sent this poem that they found of his uncle's writing, and Abe's turned it into this excellent PSA, kind of a starter PSA here. And my understanding is there's going to be several versions, each in a different genre of music. So it is his uncle's poetry, but put to different genres of music. So let's see how it goes.
Won't be silent, not for one more day. We'll speak out so future generations will be saved. Won't close our eyes and fear and hide. We'll let our beauty reign. Nothing stands between us and the world we dream to know. Won't be silent.
Yeah, so that's the first one out of the box. And I'm real interested to hear a little bit about the voter suppression work or the anti-voter suppression work that's going on. What's happening with that committee right now?
Well, I mean, the far right wing is spending millions of dollars to purge people off the voting rolls illegally. And in fact, my mother, who's 89 years old, called me and said that she had been purged from the voting rolls in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She's been voting there for decades, and her 93-year-old boyfriend. So there was a very important landmark Supreme Court case called Shelby versus Holder. And what they did was the right wing tried to gut the 1965 Civil Rights Act that Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement passed, with blood, right? And so this was an attempt to stop what's called pre-clearance. Pre-clearance means if you're a state, and you had a history of discrimination, you had to ask the Department of Justice if you could change the voting laws. Well, the Supreme Court eliminated that and said, oh, racism is over. There's no more racism, which is absurd on its face. Of course, we know racism is not over. Look at the KK and look at Dylan Roof. So don't tell me racism's over, please.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do now is fight back and make sure that people know that, to check their registration online. And if they've been purged, re-register. We want to fight back against electronic voting machines that flip and don't work. We think there should be, many of us should believe there should be paper ballots and what's called a digital scanner, so you can put your ballot in the scanner after you've filled it out, and which is much safer, especially with Russian interference. But we've never seen ever in the history of our nation outright theft of the voting rolls. Purging, cross-checking would be, there's a Brian Casher in Charlotte, and then they send your name to New York, and they go, oh, there's a Brian Casher in New York. Then bam, you're off the voting rolls in North Carolina. This is a right wing. This is absolute evil. This is against the democracy. It makes me so angry because I feel like the press is not paying enough attention to this. We're going to change that in August when we all 300 to 400 people come to Little Rock, Amy Zion Church. We're going to come together and we're not going to talk. We're going to say, all right, how do we organize and strategize and crush voter suppression and ramp up registration? Because the more you ramp up voter registration, the less the purge will be effective, right? But also, we need more people to vote and register.
Yeah, I agree. Voter registration is critical, but I'm going to focus in on this right-wing tactic because I don't sense it coming from anywhere else. The voter purge, voter suppression, gerrymandering. I mean, North Carolina is historic. I mean, when we live in North Carolina, we don't have to go to South Korea or Russia to find anti-democratic tactics. They're right here in our own legislature. Defeating the integrity of elections to ensure certain power blocks remain in place. And I mean, they don't even hide it anymore, Joel. They don't even hide it anymore. So, this work is just so important. And, I got to thank you for doing this. And how can people plug into these groups or find out more about what's going on? Do you got Facebook pages? What's up?
Yeah, I mean, people can go to the website. It's called the Transformative Justice Coalition. Just Google Transformative Justice Coalition. That would be the easiest thing to do. But, there comes a time where you just got to say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mr. Connors used to say, Siegel, sometimes you got to punch the person back in the nose. Got to punch him in the nose. We're too quiet. We're too docile. Don't cooperate with fascism. Don't cooperate with what I call the Trump dictatorship. Don't cooperate with evil. Don't cooperate with any forces that are trying to steal the vote or stop people from breathing clean air or drinking clean water. We're going to have to start fighting back, and we're going to have to be way more honest than we've been. Who is this right wing? Who are they? Why do they want to steal our democracy? What's going on here? This is America. America is about democracy. But I think the far right wing has been in power for far too long. So I will tell you that one of the things I am working on, Brian, is we have to create a progressive, united front of good people and organizations across the country, because we're really kidding ourselves if we think that we can take on the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex, the fossil fuel industrial complex, the for-profit healthcare industrial complex, working in these silos.
Right.
And we have a lot of corporate activists, I'm sorry, I have to be honest, who, they haven't studied the history of Martin King or Mandela or Gandhi. We have to unite. The right wing united in early 70s. That's how they got Reagan elected. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on phony think tanks, Heritage Foundation, Fox News. They bought AM radio stations. If we're really serious about fighting for, the little guy and the little girl and families and seniors, let's unite under one front. And I've been working on that since I'm 26 years old. The universal healthcare movement, we were one united front. That's how we got the Affordable Care Act passed. And that's why Medicare for All is now went from obscurity to one of the number one issues of the Democratic Party, which still blows me away. I thought it was dead after the Affordable Care Act. Thank you, Bernie Sanders and the single payer movement. But it's like, do we want to win or do we not want to win? Do we want everyone to have a fair chance at life, getting a job, getting health care, being able to go to school, or not? I think the ones who do, we're coming together. That is what Justice Action Mobilization Network is also about. It's mobilizing, it's action. That's why I love your show, because you're highlighting the people who actually are doing the organizing, and whether it's nationally, globally, and in our own communities. And a lot of times, the real people doing the work on behalf of people are the last to be seen in the media. So thank you for this show. I'm going to help you get as many organizers and leaders as I can,
Well, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And it is crucial. And, my take on it, Joel, is that right now, the populace, the people, when we come together in a plebiscite, what have you, we are in a position of power like we've never been in 100 years right now. The oligarchs in this country are in fear. They started a campaign. You probably saw it out there about how maybe grandma would be willing to die because of COVID-19 instead of shutting down the economy. Just let 20% of our elders die and maybe 2% of the rest of us and just a little few kids, But it's insanity, right? Where the economy and the corporate power base tries to confuse people, and they're succeeding at confusing at least 30%, but tries to confuse people into thinking that the economy is what this world and earth is all about. But it's not. It's living, breathing people. And right now the oligarchs are in fear because people are getting a reset. We're resetting right now. All over this country, all over the world, people are thinking twice about, are our systems really working? And by the way, for COVID-19, everybody should know we had plans on the books. We had effective plans on the books, and they were blocked. Okay, we'll be talking about that some more later. And the press is starting to catch up to where we were a month ago. Truth to Power for You put out a COVID special for safety, and just now the CDC and the federal government are starting to catch up where we were at a month ago. So the work you're doing, Joel, is absolutely incredible. And
thank you.
I'd like to close out on, we're out of time here, but I do want to ask you one more thing. When it comes to music, I know you've got a nice album out there, Funkology 101. You've got this number we're going to show now. We need to see you live sometime. We need to get Joel jamming in front of folks, right in front of everybody. Love, it's all about love. But I hope you'll come back on the show again and update people on what's going on. It is so important.
Brian, first of all, thank you for having me. I think COVID-19 it's a rebirth of the earth and the rebirth of this country. It's time to recreate and reimagine what a caring society would look like. That's what Rabbi Michael Lerner of Tikkun and I talked about today. Don't you think that caring about people is more important than making, $4 billion a year? It's time for us to just go back to the basics, of do unto others as you'd have them do, unto you. But, we can't complain about the 1% anymore. Let's look at the 99%. And you go, you know what? I think it's time for the 99% to unite, put together a clear, progressive agenda, universal health care, jobs for all, 100% clean, renewable energy. Seniors should be able to live not on $1,000 a month, but maybe $3,000 a month. Isn't it kind of basic that everyone should have housing and a right to a job and childcare and education? Yes. So
Here.
What's the problem? The problem is we need new leaders. We especially need younger leaders. I do a lot of mentoring, Brian. I try to raise up young leaders all the time, especially young leaders of color. The future of America and the world will rest in the hands of younger leaders because climate change is threatening our civilization. But I hope that anyone's listening to me right now, read revolutionary history, read Gandhi, read Mandela, read King, read Gorbachev, read Aung Suu Kyi.
Thank you for that.
Read Rosa Parks.
Right on.
Learn from the best.
Well, we're trying right now, trying to learn from you, Joel. So we're gonna cut away.
I'm still learning.
All right.
I'm still learning.
All right. So hey, here's Joel Segal and Jeremiah Chapman with Green Revolution.
The supreme reality of our time is our indivisibility as children of God and the common vulnerability of this planet.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stop the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win and we can't afford to losing. Evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
Unmistakable evidence has established the fact.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stop the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win and we can't afford to losing. Evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
Unmistakable evidence has established the fact.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stop the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win and we can't afford to losing. Evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
Unmistakable evidence has established the fact.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stop the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win and we can't afford to losing. Evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
People, planet, and peace over profit.
People, planet, peace over profit.
People, planet, and peace over profit.
People, planet, peace over profit.
People, planet, and peace over profit.
People, planet, peace over profit.
Yeah.
All right. There's Green Revolution for you by Joel Segal and Jeremiah Chapman, both congressional staffers at one point. And it's amazing that we were over here doing some organizing, had a group of people down here at the studio, and while we did find a little bit of the Jägermeister tap, but that came out of it, out of a organizing session. That tune just spontaneously happened. We plugged in, recorded it, and boom, there it is. Anyway, so You know, Truth to Power for You is really a mini-series on organizing, on how to make change. We've got about 16 half-hour episodes already online at our Facebook page, Truth to Power for You. You're welcome to check us out anytime. It's absolutely free and for you, okay? We've got Joel is being interviewed, Dr. William Barber, Danny Glover stopped by, Eleanor Goldfield's been by. We've had a lot of really well-known organizers and people who are successful in making change who are sharing their tactics and strategies so you can do the same thing in your hometown, your state, your country, for that matter. So that being said, we close out every show with a number by Anne E. DeChant called Out There. So in fact, let's do Green Revolution one more time.
The supreme reality of our time is our indivisibility as children of God and the common vulnerability of this planet.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stopping the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win, and we can't afford to losing, evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
Unmistakable evidence has established the fact.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stopping the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win, and we can't afford to losing, evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
Unmistakable evidence has established the fact.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stopping the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win, and we can't afford to losing, evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
Unmistakable evidence has established the fact.
It's a green revolution, mankind's evolution, yeah, green revolution, yeah, till we stopping the pollution, and that's what we got solutions. It's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution, yeah, while this poverty reducing, gotta win, and we can't afford to losing, evolution, it's a green revolution, yeah, cause it's a green revolution.
People, planet, and peace over profit.
People, planet, peace over profit.
People, planet, and peace over profit.
People, planet, peace over profit.
People, planet, and peace over profit.
People, planet, peace over profit.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. That's our first live stream. We're gonna start doing these regularly. We're gonna get them squared out, get all the kinks worked out. Don't forget to like the Facebook page for updates, and we'll see y'all next time.